one beyond our race,
This could be one
in the face of adversity. We are one, you and I, and it's our right to know how and why. WION, you are more connected than you know.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is another edition of World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandra.
And I'm Hemkaur Sura, and on the show today, tensions between Pakistan and Iran have reached a tipping point. This has now raised fears of an escalation. This after Pakistan carried out its intelligence-based operation marked Bar Sarmachar. And the situation has led to calls for restraint by the United States, the United Nations, as well as China. What's happening on that front? We'll explore this on the show today.
Also on the show, viewers, NATO has announced its biggest drills of about 90,000 troops. The exercises will span from North America to NATO's eastern flank near the Russian border. The drill Steadfast 2024 will run till late May, involving all units from 31 NATO member countries. This will also include candidate member Sweden. First, let's take a look at the headlines. This is, of course, World DNA.
The Israeli army intensively bombs the southern Gaza Strip against the backdrop of a deep dispute between Israel and Washington over a possible Palestinian state and the increasing regionalization of the conflict.
Yemen's Houthi rebels claim they carried out a fresh missile attack on a US ship in the Gulf of Aden.
Ukraine warns that its army faces a very real and pressing ammunition shortage in its war with Russia as Western allies agree to send new artillery supplies.
The US Congress greenlit temporary funding to thwart a partial government shutdown that threatened the functions of multiple key federal agencies.
Global stocks rebound as investors assess the outlook for interest rates. Tech giants rebound from recent losses. Starting with the tensions between Iran and Pakistan, which have now reached a boiling point. This is, of course, as I mentioned, raised fears of an escalation in the region.
Now, those are fears which have been mounting ever since the Israel-Hamas war started, and this is another point of escalation, which it can turn out to be. The situation has drawn the attention of the US and United Nations along with China, a strong ally for both the nations, Iran and Pakistan. Now, they're calling for calm and restraint. In the latest, the Pakistan army shares operation details of strikes deep inside Iranian territory. It says that the strikes targeted hideouts used by terrorist organizations, namely Balochistan Liberation Army and the Balochistan Liberation Front, the BLA and the BLF. The Pakistan Army says that it used killer drones, rockets, loitering munitions and standoff weapons. The official statement asserts that maximum care was taken to avoid collateral damage. Iran says that 9 civilians were killed in the attack. Among the dead were 4 children.
Fearing possible escalation in the conflict, Beijing has expressed willingness to play a constructive role in de-escalating the situation if both sides want it.
中方一贯主张根据联合国宪章宗旨原则和国际法。
Iran and Pakistan are close neighbors, friendly countries to China, and countries with important influence. China sincerely hopes that both sides can maintain calm and restraint and avoid escalating tensions. If there is a need from both parties, we are also willing to play a constructive role in alleviating the situation.
局势紧张升级。
The United States, which is also monitoring the situation closely, the White House has urged restraint on all sides in tensions between Iran and Pakistan.
This week, my administration.
UN Chief Antonio Guterres has also raised concerns. He has called on the two governments to exercise maximum restraint.
He's very concerned about this escalation, about the exchange of fire, of rockets between Iran and Pakistan. We've seen reports of casualties on both sides. Again, he urges both countries to exercise maximum restraint, avoid any further escalation.
The Taliban-governed Afghanistan has also called on Pakistan and Iran's tensions alarming. They have urged both parties to exercise restraint. This comes after Pakistan launched retaliatory missile strikes into the Iranian territory, reportedly killing 9 people, including 4 children. This was reportedly in retaliation to the Iranian missile and drone attacks in Pakistan on Tuesday that killed 2 children and injured 3 others. Pakistan says its strikes hit terror hideouts around the city in the Sistan-Balochistan province. Earlier, Pakistan had condemned Iran's strike on Tuesday in its Balochistan province near the Iranian border. Iran insisted that its strikes were aimed at the Jaish al-Adl group that has carried out attacks inside Iran and not Pakistan's citizens. With the latest with what's happening between Iran and Pakistan, the geopolitical landscape, it's getting increasingly uncertain and unstable. And in light of this, NATO has announced the biggest military drills in decades. Shivan has all the details. Over to you, Shivan.
Thanks, Aim. We're going to shift our focus now from West Asia towards the European side, where, of course, the Russia-Ukraine war continues. Well, as the war between the two nations, it bogs down, NATO is launching its largest exercise since the Cold War. And today I'll walk you through the details of NATO's upcoming military exercise. Now, in the months-long war games, NATO will be hosting the Steadfast Defender 2024 drills. The games are expected to last until the end of May. The exercise aims to demonstrate NATO's ability to rapidly deploy forces from North America and other parts of the alliance to reinforce the defense of Europe. Now, in the drills, about 90,000 personnel are set to take part. More than 50 ships, from aircraft carriers to destroyers, more than 80 fighter jets, helicopters and drones, and at least 1,100 combat vehicles, including 133 tanks and 533 infantry fighting vehicles. Now, during the second part of the Steadfast Defender 2024 exercise, a special focus will be on the deployment of NATO's quick reaction force to Poland on the alliance's eastern flank. Now, of course, we know Poland is extremely close, right next to Russia, and having the drills over there, it clears It sends a clear signal to you-know-who. Now, other major locations of the drills will be the Baltic states. Take a look at these. Of course, there is going to be Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Poland, and of course, Norway and Germany as well. Now, they're seen as most at risk, at least the Baltic states. They're seen most at risk from a potential Russian attack as they border. Germany, a hub for incoming reinforcements, and countries on the fringes of the alliance such as Norway and Romania. They're also going to be involved. Now, these are the places where NATO will be conducting its drills, which are expected to last until the end of May. Now, NATO is conducting its biggest drills right in the face of Russia. Of course, this is going to set some kind of ball rolling for 2024 as the Russia-Ukraine war is far from over. Back to you, Him.
Thank you so much, Shivan, for that detailed report. With that, let's shift our focus now. Ahead of the Russian presidential elections in March, over 2 million Russians signed in their support for President Vladimir Putin's candidacy. According to the Russian law, independent candidates must gather 300,000 signatures from at least 40 regions to get on the ballot. Putin is a self-nominated candidate and has already collected 2.5 million signatures. That's a million more than 2018. Putin also visited his campaign headquarters in Moscow, where he saw the signature verification process and spoke to volunteers.
Мы очень рады вас встречать в вашем избирательном штабе. Разумеется, штаб. А это уголь. Это уголь.
Укрепление Отечества.
We all have a common goal, strengthening of the motherland. I am very pleased that I see in you such powerful support of younger generations. Thank you very much, both you and all the volunteers who work for this common goal, especially to those guys who are now on the front line or next to it, helping our fighters. Thank you very much.
Earlier, the Election Commission approved 3 candidates nominated by parties represented in Parliament. Party candidates are not required to collect signatures. Now, the current candidates don't pose a major challenge to Putin, who has dominated Russian politics since becoming president in 2000. Now, in the last 24 years, Putin has kept a tight control on politics, making his re-election a foregone conclusion in March.
The United States has narrowly averted a partial government shutdown. The House of Representatives on Thursday approved a stopgap bill to fund the federal government until early March.
Well, the bill is all set to get President Joe Biden's approval now. The bill was passed 314 to 108 with 106 Republicans and 2 Democrats in opposition. Earlier, the Senate had easily passed the bill with 77 to 18 vote ahead of the weekend deadline. And this is the third stopgap funding bill known as a continuing resolution. This would simply extend last fiscal year's spending levels until March 8th for government spending. The focus now shifts to the need to pass the 12 bills providing the full year budget. The fiscal year began on 1st of October, but the Democratic majority Senate and Republican-controlled House are yet to pass a full year's funding bill. Now, in fact, both parties can't seem to be agreeing to a final number here. Earlier, both agreed to $1.59 trillion in discretionary spending for the whole year, but now they argue that the actual amount agreed was $1.66 trillion. The intense jockeying between the two parties comes amid a $34.4 trillion national debt.
And Shivan, in fact, to discuss this further, we'd earlier spoken to our correspondent Susan Tehrani, and she explains to us what the significance of this deal is between Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer regarding government funding and how might it impact future negotiations as well.
The deal sets new spending levels and also renews hope for completing the funding process by the new deadline of March. However, more right-leaning House Republicans are rebelling against it, mostly because they want to reduce the spending even further and for more concessions. This may provide challenges moving forward.
Now it's 2024. Of course, it's the election year across nations over the world, of course, which includes the US as well. So we spoke with Susan regarding how this will play out in an election year. Listen to this.
The passage of this bill doesn't directly impact the upcoming U.S. presidential elections. However, it does provide funding for various federal agencies, which will indirectly impact the elections. Take, for example, the Election Assistance Commission, which is in charge of the security of elections and voting systems. Also, local and state election officials who are responsible for administering elections in their constituencies. This funding will go towards that as well. But as for directly impacting the election, it doesn't do that.
Now, in India's state of Gujarat, at least 14 students and 2 teachers died after a boat overturned in the lake in the district of Vadodara.
Here's a report that tells you more details on this incident.
A joyous picnic turned fatal when a group of school children in Vadodara faced a heartbreaking fate. They had gone for boating in Harni Lake, but soon after, a tragic incident unfolded, taking away the lives of at least 14 children on the boat. The boat capsized in the lake, leaving the students and their teachers in a perilous situation. 2 teachers also lost their lives in the mishap. A search operation is underway to trace the remaining students of New Sunrise School. With rescue and relief operations in progress, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has expressed his grief on the deeply distressing incident. He has assured that the administration is providing all possible assistance to those affected. Monetary relief has been offered to the families of the deceased and the injured. But local officials have expressed concerns on what caused the incident in the first place, even as any possible lapses are being probed.
Around 35 people were on the boat, perhaps more than its capacity. The boat lost its balance and capsized, and there were no safety measures.
Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Now, cold wave is sweeping the United States. It has so far claimed 40 lives across 9 states since the 12th of January.
Deaths have been reported in Arkansas, Illinois, Kansas, Mississippi, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Tennessee and Wisconsin. Tennessee had the highest number of weather-related deaths. 14 people died due to the severe weather. Brutally cold temperatures and dangerous wind chills are moving across the country. Much of the Rockies, Great Plains and Midwest are affected with wind chills below minus 30 degrees. In Chicago, classes were cancelled for public school students.
Philadelphia received its first significant snowfall in almost 2 years. People took the opportunity to enjoy the snow day while workers and residents cleaned the snowy sidewalks. Now, in Oregon, strong winds caused power shortage in over 85,000 homes and businesses. Uprooted trees and power lines also created dangerous travel conditions. Meanwhile, after a 700-day-long snow drought, New York City finally saw snowfall ending a historic period of very little snowfall.
The weather on a live electrical wire.
The National Weather Office confirmed a thin layer of snow in various parts of the city. The agency recorded an inch of snowfall in the official measuring point, that's the Central Park area. The area witnessed about 1.4 inches of snowfall since the onset of Monday's winter storm. Scientists continue to raise alarm against the worsening climate crisis. The impact on climate has affected the intensity, frequency and predictability of snowfall across the world. And with just 3 days to go before the consecration ceremony at the newly built Ram Temple, preparations are in full swing in Ayodhya.
Well, in the latest, the idol of Sri Ram has been placed inside the temple on Thursday afternoon ahead of the Pran Pratishtha ceremony on the 22nd of January. Now, the first photo of the idol, which is covered with a veil, was revealed during the placement ceremony in the Sanctum Sanctorum. The idol depicts the deity as a 5-year-old child in a standing posture. Meanwhile, more than 500 statues are being prepared in Ayodhya's Ram Sevakpuram. The statues will represent the life of Lord Ram. Now, these statues will grace the corridor leading to the Grand Temple.
On the day of the ceremony, all public sector banks, public sector insurance companies, public sector financial institutions and regional rural banks will observe a half day. Railways will facilitate its passengers with live streaming of the consecration ceremony across the country. At least 9,000 screens have been set up at railway stations across the country. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will also release 6 commemorative postage stamps themed on the Ram Temple.
Now, the stamps showcase the international appeal of Sri Ram and highlights the essential elements related to the Janmabhoomi Mandir.
Moving on now, Japan is counting down to a precision landing of a spacecraft on the moon today.
Well, it is aiming to become the 5th country to achieve a lunar landing, and this would be a boost for a space program that has suffered a wave of setbacks and has been eclipsed by a rival China. More in our next report. Check it out.
Japan aims to become the 5th country to put a spacecraft on the moon when it attempts a precision landing on Friday. The Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency probe aims to land within 100 meters or 328 feet of its target. The agency says the technology is unprecedented and essential in the search for moon water and human habitability. If successful, it would be a boost for a space program that suffered a wave of setbacks and has been eclipsed by rival China. The probe will start a 20-minute touchdown phase from 1500 GMT on Friday. It will try to land on a target site roughly the size of 2 athletic tracks on the slope of a crater just south of the lunar equator. Here's Kazuto Saiki, a professor at Ritsumeikan University, who developed the probe's near-infrared camera that will analyze moon rocks.
Once this technology is proven successful, we'll be able to land on difficult terrain, such as the moon's poles. I hope this will help Japan to keep its technology advanced at a very high level in the world.
All systems are go. Tokyo is looking to play a bigger role in space, partnering with close ally Washington to respond to China. But its space agency, also known as JAXA, has faced multiple setbacks in its rocket development. That includes launch failures last year of its new flagship H-3 rocket, which aimed to match the lower costs of rockets by companies like SpaceX. JAXA has twice landed on small asteroids, but a moon landing is much more difficult due to its gravity. In an interview, Bledin Bowen, a space policy specialist at the University of Leicester, underlined the importance of the Moon Sniper's mission to Japan.
Japan being the 5th state to land a rover on the moon would be very important and significant because it will demonstrate its space industry and capabilities to the world and global industrial interests. It will also demonstrate that it can keep up with the times as more and more countries are much more interested in the moon than ever before.
Bowen doesn't think the technology will be a game changer, but could help lower the costs of accessing the moon. Upon landing, the Moon Sniper will deploy 2 mini probes that will take pictures of the spacecraft. JAXA says it'll take up to a month to verify whether the probe achieved their high-precision landing goals after the touchdown.
And with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. We will be back after the break. When we get back, we will be bringing you more updates on tensions which continue to peak in the Red Sea as the United States maintains that allied counter-strikes will continue against the Iran-backed Houthi rebels. And this comes as the deterrent strikes against the Houthis have not yet stopped the assaults on shipping across the Red Sea.
Tracking the unfolding drama surrounding social media giant Meta, the recently released documents from a lawsuit against Meta reveal its reluctance to ensure children's safety on its platforms. We'll be bringing you all the updates on the other side. Stay tuned.
India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
As the world awaits the grand consecration ceremony of the Rum Temple in Ayodhya, we look at actors who have essayed the role of Lord Rum on screen.
Your skin's not bad. Thank you. You're very well preserved.
We decode the impact of TV shows on pop culture and society. And find out all about the best Indian bands of all time. With me, Alison Grange, on WION E-Club at these times. Chaos in Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Congo River rises to its highest level in over 60 years, claiming over 300 lives in the past few months. Also, South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal reels under a catastrophic flood, leaving at least 5 dead. South Africa gears up for elections. African National Congress, the only party to rule the nation post-apartheid in 1994, faces an erosion in support. A film produced by actor and director Funke Akindele becomes the highest-earning Nigerian film. This week on World of Africa at these times.
How do we imagine the future when on certain mornings we can hardly imagine the afternoon? And today on Trailblazers, Mayanosh from Godrej, Neelima from Luminous Power Technologies, Kevin from the Jamie Oliver Group, Shagata from Tata, and Vatsal from DM Asia.
No amount of research is actually going to tell you accurately what the future is going to do.
To a large extent, I think creative is still the king. This is something that is not going to change.
Having customer-centric strategies which will lead to keeping the growth ahead of the industry trends.
If you have the right content, talking to the right audience, you can make your dollar go much, much farther.
Gen Z comes with a mind of their own. They want to experiment.
Join me on a special episode where we gaze into the future of marketing. I'm Jasper Reed, and this is Trailblazers.
This week on the India Story. The Ram Mandir in Ayodhya is almost complete and nears its grand opening. Watch the India Story as the nation chants Jai Shri Ram, connecting millions to the essence of their heritage.
You know, the majority of Hindus of India, I would say, 75 to 80% of Hindus want it, so you can't blame Mr. Modi for taking advantage of that.
Also on the show, how should the Indian government tackle the deep fake menace?
So maybe let's say this video of ours, you and I talking, I would even tell my friends, don't believe that I'm actually talking to Vikram or you're actually seeing Ritesh, but it could be a deep fake of Ritesh.
Watch only on WION at these times.
This week on the West Asia Post, a fresh wave of volatility after Iran carries out targeted strikes in multiple countries. Turkey strikes Kurdish establishments in northern Syria and Iraq, causing blackout in hundreds of villages. Also on the show, we take a look at how Gazans are surviving the war with the fear of famine hanging over their heads. All this and much more. Watch the West Asia Post with me, Radi Francis, every Friday at these times, only on WION, World is One.
Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. So far on the show, we've covered how NATO has announced that it will be conducting its largest drills in decades of about 90,000 troops. This will span from North America to its eastern flank that borders Russia. We will, of course, continue to track all the developments on that.
Also, in the first half hour of the show, we brought you the latest from the United States, where the US has narrowly averted a partial government shutdown. The House of Representatives on Thursday approved a stopgap bill to fund the federal government until early March. Now, we will be tracking that closely, but for now, let's get you started with the other headlines we're tracking for you at this hour. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest.
This is the first image of the Ram Lalla idol, which has been installed inside the Sanctum Sanctorum as part of the rituals in the run-up to the consecration ceremony of the Ram Temple.
Israeli forces advance into the southern Gaza Strip's main city, pounding areas near the enclave's biggest functioning hospital as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vows many more months of fighting.
UN, China and the United States appeal for restraint after Iran and Pakistan traded deadly airstrikes on militant targets on each other's territory.
The US Congress greenlit temporary funding on Thursday to thwart a partial government shutdown that threatened the functions of multiple key federal agencies and could have seen thousands of employees sent home without pay.
Defending champion Aryna Sabalenka is breathing fire at the Australian Open. The second seed did not drop a single game against 28 seed Lisa. And the situation hasn't gotten any better in the Red Sea either. The United States carried out its fifth strike against the Houthis.
But that isn't deterring the Yemen-based rebel group still. A fact which even the Biden administration is acknowledging now. The Houthis have struck yet another US ship in the Red Sea. They are not stopping. While the Houthis, who are backed by Iran, claim to have achieved a successful hit on the US-owned tanker ship, the US military says that 2 anti-ship ballistic missiles were fired at the MV Chem Ranger tanker ship, but the missiles impacted the water near the ship. Now, there were no reported injuries or damage to the vessel.
Earlier in the counter-strike, the US Navy's FA-18 fighter aircraft destroyed 2 Houthi anti-ship missiles. As per the US Central Command, the destroyed missiles were aimed at the southern Red Sea and were in full readiness for launch.
The US, along with the UK, has been launching strikes against the Houthis, but the rebel group says it will continue the Red Sea attacks till the time Israel stops its assault on Gaza. Now, US President Joe Biden has said that the collaborative strikes against the Houthis will continue, even though it has not yet deterred the rebel group from targeting commercial and military vessels in the Red Sea. The Biden administration, which relisted the rebel group under specially designated global terrorists, the US Pentagon also said that the deterrence has not immediately stopped the Houthi aggression, but has definitely lowered the frequency. Listen to this.
The end goal is for these attacks to stop, for us to deter Houthi strikes, again, from commercial shipping that has been transiting the Red Sea for many, many decades and should be allowed to continue freely without harassment or without fear of bombardment from Houthi-controlled areas in Yemen.
The Vice President of Yemen's internationally recognized government says that the airstrikes alone can't deter the Houthis and a ground offensive is necessary. Darus al-Zubaydi heads the secessionist Southern Transnational Council, which wants to split the country back in two, reversing its 1990 unification.
He says a Saudi-led military intervention launched in support of the government in 2015, which also involved airstrikes, had been insufficient to deter the Houthis. The death toll continues to mount in Gaza, with authorities saying at least 93 were killed in Israeli strikes during the last 24 hours.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has once again said that the war will go on for months, adding that Israel has destroyed around two-thirds of Hamas's fighting regiments in Gaza.
There are two stages to the fighting. The first is destroying the Hamas regiments. Those are their organized combat frameworks. Up until now, 16 or 17 out of 24 have been destroyed. After that, there is the stage of clearing the territory of militants. The first action is usually shorter. The second usually takes longer, and we deal with both things at the same time.
The Israeli army says that troops have now reached the southernmost point of their ground invasions of Gaza so far. This amid the intensified operation in southern Gaza's main city of Khan Yunis. Israel says it eliminated dozens of militants here in the past day and added that soldiers raided an outpost of Hamas's Khan Yunis brigade as well as of officers of its commanders and a seized weapons cache.
Israeli army also released a video showing demolition of tunnels that are part of a Hamas weapons manufacturing network in southern Gaza.
Meanwhile, there are visuals from Rafah where dozens were killed according to Gaza health authorities. Many people have fled the area amid heavy bombardment. On the other hand, Israelis have continued their protest demanding more action from the government to secure the release of hostages in Gaza. Protesters blocked a highway in Tel Aviv as they called for a different politics to end the war in Gaza.
For now, all we have heard is the right-wing people talking about occupying Gaza, killing all the people in Gaza and having us living in a continuous war. What we ask for is a different politics, a politics that can bring both people who are living here, and also the Jewish people and the Palestinian people, peace, liberty and security.
Let's shift our focus now. The U.S. Justice Department has released a report which is the most comprehensive federal account of the malign police response to May 24th, 2022, that's shooting at Uvalde's Robb Elementary School.
The report identifies cascading failures in law enforcement's handling of the massacre. It says that more than a dozen officers waited for over an hour outside classrooms where the shooting was taking place and did nothing as children lay dead or were dying inside.
"75 minutes after the first officers arrived on scene, officers finally entered room 111. The subject engaged the entry team with gunfire, and the officers responded with fire. 77 minutes after the first officers arrived on the scene, and after 45 rounds had been fired by the active shooter, the shooter was killed."
The report further said that the police repeatedly communicated inaccurate information to grieving families. Family members of the victims hope that the report will help in finding the government accountable for the delayed police response.
I hope that the failures end today and that local officials do what wasn't done that day, do right by the victims and survivors of Robb Elementary, terminations, criminal prosecutions, and our state and federal government enact sensible gun laws, because Robb Elementary began the day an 18-year-old wasn't allowed to purchase an AR-15.
In America's worst school shooting in a decade, on the 24th of May 2022, 19 young children and 2 teachers were killed when a teenage gunman went on a rampage at the elementary school. Since then, the police in Uvalde as well as local political leadership have been under intense scrutiny. For more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report. Listen to this.
The delay in confronting the gunman meant that the 19 children and 2 teachers who were fatally shot did not receive immediate medical care. 1 teacher and at least 1 student who were seriously injured but found alive in classrooms later died on their way to the hospital. 17 other children were injured but survived. The question of whether if swifter action was taken, more lives would have been saved continues to haunt the community in Uvalde. And 2 years on, even with this comprehensive investigation, there are no answers to the frustration of the victims' families. However, the most comprehensive bipartisan gun legislation in decades was passed on Capitol Hill. The New York Times talked to a grandfather whose 10-year-old grandson, Javier, died on that day, but he died on his way to the hospital, which was 40 miles away from that school. He said that they dropped the ball every step of the way. First, by not going into the classrooms sooner, and second of all, he believes if there was a helicopter to transport his grandson to the hospital that was so far away, perhaps Javier would be here today. He said, quote unquote, they dropped the ball every step of the way. He's looking for answers and accountability for some closure, which he says he hasn't received so far 2 years on. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
All right, over to technology next. In the unfolding drama surrounding social media giant Meta, recently released documents from a lawsuit against Meta reveal the company's reluctance to ensure children's safety on its platforms.
Now, the documents are a part of the United States New Mexico lawsuit against Meta. The state's attorney general, that's Raul Torres, has sued Meta, accusing it of failing to protect young users from exposure to child sexual abuse material. Internal messages and presentations from 2020 and 2021 show that Meta was aware of the issues that included adults contacting children on Instagram and the sexualization of minors on the platform. The People You May Know feature on Meta's Instagram also posed dangers by recommending connections between adults and children. And according to attorney Torres, Meta employees had long tried to alert executives about the risk to children.
He states, and I'm going to quote here, for years Meta employees tried to sound the alarm about how decisions made by Meta executives subjected children to dangerous sexual exploitation, while the company continues to downplay the illegal and harmful activity children are exposed to. Meta's internal data and presentations show the problem is severe and pervasive. Now, despite this, Meta was slow to address the issues. Instagram only began restricting adults' ability to message minors in 2021, and later in March 2021, it restricted people over 19 from messaging minors. Now, in response, Meta mentioned its decade-long commitment to online safety, emphasizing the mischaracterization of their work. Earlier, former Meta engineering director Arturo Beyer had testified about his daughter's troubling experiences on Instagram, emphasizing the company's shortcomings. Meta claims to use sophisticated technology, employ child safety experts, report content to authorities, and collaborate with law enforcement.
Despite updates to safeguard, critics argue that Meta has not done enough for child safety. Recently, Meta announced its plans to hide inappropriate content from teenagers' accounts on Instagram and Facebook. This move follows a lawsuit by 33 states in accusing Meta of contributing to the youth mental health crisis by designing addictive features. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, along with other tech CEOs, is scheduled to testify before the US Senate on child safety by the end of January. And now we bring you a somber report from the West Bank, where the echoes of the Israel-Hamas conflict reverberate through once bustling markets and silent streets.
Businesses once thriving now face an unprecedented economic downturn. Take a look at this next report for more.
In the aftermath of the October 7th Hamas attacks in Israel, the West Bank's once vibrant economy is now navigating a treacherous path. Hafez Ghazafne, a falafel stall owner, shares his struggle as customers dwindle. His monthly income has plummeted from 7,000 to 2,000 shekels, reflecting a broader economic downturn in the region.
I used to have many customers purchasing sandwiches and meals. However, lately I have noticed some people bringing their own meals from home. This indicates that they are now preparing their breakfast or lunch at home due to the challenging economic situation.
The Israel-Hamas war has triggered a cascade of economic challenges in the West Bank. The World Bank estimates a potential 6% fall in GDP this year. The International Labour Organization reports a 32% job loss. Israel's withdrawal of 130,000 work permits further exacerbates the situation, leaving many Palestinians without a source of income. The economic contraction is evident in various sectors. Bishara Jubran, manager of a household products factory, recounts losses of $200,000 due to halted exports to Gaza.
We are talking about a loss, not only from the past months of the war, but about the fact that we do not see that there will be production this year in this factory. Our sales rate in this department exceeds $200,000. But we don't foresee any positive sales prospect for this department this year.
Increased transport costs, numerous checkpoints and sealed-off towns further hamper economic activity. Abdul Idris, president of the Palestinian Chamber of Commerce, highlights the cash crunch faced by West Bank.
Today, we have 950 million shekels in suspended salaries. There are about 300 million shekels which are government's operational expenses also suspended. Additionally, we have 200 million shekels of inputs from our people inside and 1.2 billion shekels the income of workers inside. All of this is currently halted. Today, we operate at 50 to 60% capacity at best in the productive and practical sector.
With the Palestinian economy already strained, the current crisis underscores its vulnerability, leaving businesses on the brink and communities grappling with an uncertain future. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And economic sirens are ringing in China as its aging population poses a threat to key policy goals.
Well, with a record low birth rate and a surge in COVID-19 deaths, the country is experiencing a second consecutive year of population decline. And this raises concerns about its long-term growth prospects as well.
Now, as we move forward, the implications become clearer. Over the next decade, approximately 300 million individuals, the largest demographic group that's aged 50 to 60, are set to exit the workforce. Simultaneously, provincial-level jurisdictions are grappling with pension budget deficits, with projections suggesting the pension system could run out of funds by 2035.
The low retirement age in China adds complexity, with 28 million people scheduled to retire this year alone. Examining the broader economic impact, China's household consumption already ranks among the lowest globally, as large segments of the population move past their prime for consumption. Structural imbalances are exacerbated in the property sector, accounting for a quarter of economic output faces uncertainty, echoing Japan's past struggles. Moreover, an aging workforce poses challenges to innovation, potentially slowing productivity improvements.
As China grapples with demographic challenges, a shadow looms over the reliability of its economic indicators, despite official announcements of a 5.2% GDP growth in 2023. Economists remain skeptical. Limited transparency and a decrease in the number of economic indicators provided by the National Bureau of Statistics have fueled doubts. Alternative calculations such as nightlight density and surveys by international agencies suggest a potential overestimation of China's economic output. The reliability of China's GDP growth figures, it becomes increasingly contentious, raising questions about the true state of its economic health.
Of course, two-time finalist Daniil Medvedev survived a huge scare against Finland's Emil Ruusuvuori to reach the third round of the Australian Open.
Now, the 5-set thriller, it ended at 3:40 a.m. local time and rounded off an extraordinary day 5 at Melbourne Park. 20-21 US lead after winning the tiebreak. The Russian finally found his groove in the third and got 2 early breaks. Ruusuvuori did manage to break back, but Medvedev held on to take the match to a 4th set. Third seed Medvedev was just 2 points away from defeating while trailing 4-5, but he raised his levels at the perfect time.
51 winners and 18 aces to beat the highly rated Danish player in 4 sets.
And defending women's singles champion Aryna Sabalenka started the day 6 at Australian Open with a perfect victory.
Well, the second seed demolished 28th seed Ukraine's first player at this year's Australian Open to deliver a double bagel. This is her 10th consecutive win in Melbourne, and she has now reached the last 16 of a Grand Slam for the 11th.
In football, Atletico Madrid have dumped rivals Real Madrid out of Copa del Rey in the round of 16. Diego Simeone's side had lost Real just 8 days ago, but this time came out on top with a scoreline to 4-2. Samuel Lino put Atletico ahead in the 39th minute, but goalkeeper Jan Oblak knocked Luka Modric's free kick into own net to hand Real an equalizer. Spain captain Alvaro Morata put the hosts ahead again after restart. Real once again equalized in the 82nd minute through Jose Lu, and the match went to extra time and Antoine Griezmann scored from a tight angle to put Atletico in command, before Rodrigo sealed the win with the 4th goal.
Australia have registered a comprehensive 10-wicket win over West Indies in the first test in Adelaide. The West Indies tail could only add 47 runs to the overnight total of 73 for 6 and were all out for 120. Josh Hazlewood picked up a 5-wicket haul as the hosts were given a target of 26 runs to win. Australian openers Stephen Smith and Usman Khawaja leveled the score in no time, but a bouncer by Shamar Joseph hit Khawaja on the head and the southpaw walked off during the mandatory concussion check. Marnus Labuschagne completed the formalities in the 7th over as the hosts won the test inside 3 days.
In the sunshine here in Adelaide, they win by 10 wickets inside.